Hi there, hope you're all doing well. This week I pulled out a Reaper Bones mini from my to-do pile. This is the Noblewoman. She's wearing a lot of different layers of fabric, so this gives me a chance to work on some of my clothing schemes. She was primed in black and I get started with Abyss Blue for the lowest layer of clothing and the part around her neck. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. You can also join Discord using the link in the description, where you can share anything you have been working on. Next up, I start adding in the mid-tone for the blue parts now with Witching Hour Blue. This is over the majority of the fabric, just leaving that darker tone between the folds. Now for a highlight on the blue, I grabbed Celestial Blue and went over the tops of the folds. This doesn't cover too well, which is perfect as it adds just a little bit of extra texture. With the blue now finished, I moved on to the next parts with lead grey as the base colour. This is primarily for the cape and the part covering her head. Just like with the blue, I went over the bulk of the folds with English grey, just to get that mid-tone in. This looks a little bit bright going on, but the colour does darken down when it dries. But to also help that out, I don't aim for full coverage, I'm just aiming for a bit odd patchiness with some of the parts coming back through. Finishing off the grey now, I added a highlight with pale grey. Again, I don't go for a smooth coverage on this, instead I just go for like a streaky highlight on the tops of the folds. Before moving on to the last parts of the clothing, I grabbed Kronos flesh and got the skin base coated. With the first part of the skin now done, I move on to getting the remaining clothing done with Reddish grey. This is going to be a warmer piece of clothing in terms of colour. This just adds a little bit of extra contrast between them without a need for a major colour change. The folds in these parts aren't as pronounced as they are on the rest of the mini, so to add a little bit in, I had to make them up a little bit as I added the mid-tone with the warm grey. Dotting in her eyes and bringing up the tops of the folds now, I went with Offwhite. Now that her eyes have been dotted in, I can finish off the skin using a highlight of Ares Flesh. To get the pouches, belt and base done now, I went over them with the Scorched Earth. I do also dot in her eyes and then immediately had to come back in and fix it with Ares Flesh, as the tip on this brush is not what it used to be. Adding a small highlight to the leather parts, I used Ancient Forest, just adding in some variation mostly. She has some beading around her clothing and a couple of pendants. These all get done with Dragon's Gold. Finishing up, I wash her skin and the gold parts with Flesh Wash. You can also wash some of the clothing if you thin this down a bit more, but I like how it came out, so I didn't want to touch it. And that will be it for the Noblewoman. While I know light doesn't quite interact with clothing like this, the stark drops in contrast really help to sell that depth of the folds and still look like fabric. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. You can also join Discord using the link in the description, where you can share anything you have been working on. As always, if you want a closer look at this mini, check out my Instagram page. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Most importantly though, be kind to each other.